Today, I want to look at the issue of dangling modifiers, which are frequently present in student work and can create confusion on the part of the reader. Let's have a look at this first example, taken from a student's paper, and it reads as follows. Holden's journey begins in New York City, alone and directionless. Well, a modifier is a word or group of words that's supposed to describe another word in the sentence or another phrase. The problem we have here is that we do have this modifier, alone and directionless, placed at the end of the sentence. Now, modifiers are supposed to describe something that comes directly before or directly after them. So based on the sentence structure, we would think New York City is alone and directionless, but in this context, it doesn't really make sense to say that the city is alone and the city is directionless. And I suspect that the writer actually meant to talk about the character Holden Caulfield, but that isn't really clear from the sentence. So let's see if we can't help the writer replace this phrase and restructure the sentence in such a way that there is no longer a dangling modifier. The temptation may be to move this phrase back to the beginning of the sentence, but the problem there is that then alone and directionless is describing Holden's journey, and a journey can't really be alone or directionless. Really only people are alone and directionless. So let's take the sentence, however. We'll copy the modifier. We'll bring it down here in our revision. We'll capitalize it because we're going to start the sentence with the phrase, we're going to start the sentence with the phrase alone and directionless, and then put a comma there. Now this modifier should presumably describe Holden, so let's put Holden as the subject of our sentence and say that Holden begins his journey in New York City. And now if we go back and we read the sentence, alone and directionless, Holden begins his journey in New York City, we see that no longer is this modifier dangling. It's anchored. It's tied directly to the character Holden. It's appropriate in terms of describing a person with these adjectives. And then we've preserved the meaning of the rest of the sentence. So not too shabby. It gets a little more complicated as sentences become more complicated and there's more information in them. So if we look at the second example, we may have to do slightly more radical surgery. But first we'll read the original. Holden wants to be with people with whom he has real connections and who help make him happy, which is the kind of relationship he has with Jane. Well, immediately I sense that there's something wrong in this area of the sentence because which is the kind of relationship he has with Jane, the modifier that we're looking at here, definitely seems to be dangling. It's hanging out at the end of the sentence, and if I look directly before it, the word happy is not a description of a relationship. Or rather, it's a word that might describe a relationship, but it's not a relationship in and of itself. So we need to do some work, and I think what makes the most sense is to preserve the original sentence that we have here. Bring it down here into the original. We've eliminated the dangling modifier, but we don't want to lose this idea about Jane. Jane is important to Holden, and he does hold her up as a kind of role model, and his relationship with her is certainly important as he's judging other people and looking for other people who he feels he's compatible with. So I think we can fit this idea into the sentence right around here. So Holden wants to be with people, let's say, kind of people he wants to be with, well, people like Jane, with whom he has real connections and who help make him happy. Just to avoid confusion that we're not actually saying Jane is someone he has real connections, plural, and who help make him happy because she's singular, I'm just going to go back and put commas here. So the modifier, like Jane, is clearly describing people, but this phrase, this prepositional phrase, is a reference not to Jane, but to the people that Holden wants to be with. And then I think we're done.